Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome back into another edition of After the Sandstorm here on Gamecock Central. I'm Kendall Smith, joined alongside of Wes Mitchell, and you might be wondering why it's not Colin Taylor today or why we're not at Williams-Brice Stadium doing After the Sandstorm, and that is because we experienced Murphy's Law last night during After the Sandstorm. The lights went out at the stadium while we were recording it. Our microphone died. And we were in the midst of what was about to be a big rainstorm. So it was windy everywhere, couldn't really get a hold on things. So I just said, you know what? We're going to have Wes come out here and do After the Sandstorm the day after the game and talk about South Carolina's 50-10 Week 5 win over South Carolina State. First of all, hope all of you are doing well out there, especially if you are being impacted by Hurricane Ian. It's raining outside right now, so lots to get to as we get into what happened last night, Wes. And I just want to kind of start it off by talking about these last 2 weeks for South Carolina, beating Charlotte and then beating South Carolina State in week 4 and 5, coming off of two tough losses the 2 weeks before against Arkansas and Georgia. What do you think two wins like these, over 50 points scored by the offense does for South Carolina, West, as they head into SEC play again, facing Kentucky next week on the road?
Yeah, Kendall, I think there's two ways to look at it. From the outside looking in, these are two opponents South Carolina should have kind of beaten up on, and they did. They did what they were supposed to do. Now, I don't know necessarily that tells us a whole lot about what to expect. How much progress have they made? They've certainly made progress. Doesn't tell us, does that mean they're going to turn around and beat Kentucky next week or not? We don't really know. We're going to have to see that for ourselves. I think internally, though, it does do quite a bit to build confidence all the way around, offense, defense. I really felt like as much as they have wanted to work on the running game, which they clearly did, I think the last 2 weeks were about continuing to build confidence and just a comfort level with Spencer Rattler as well, like kind of honing in on what they wanted to do on offense. And obviously it was a short week. It was a short practice week this week. So there was only so much you could kind of add into the game plan. But it felt like to me against SC State, they really were trying to work on some things, kind of work out the kinks, kind of figure out what they are going to be. A lot of us talk about identity. I think we started to get a feel for what that identity might be the next 2 weeks or the last 2 weeks. Now, the next couple of weeks, we get to find out, can they do it? Can they execute it? Can it be successful against these better opponents?
You use the term making progress, and that's something that South Carolina has done to a degree over the past couple of weeks. In what area, West, do you think South Carolina has made the most progress since week 2 and week 3 against Arkansas and Georgia?
I would say offensive continuity in the running game as far as, again, building confidence. That's a word we're going to overuse, I feel like. But I feel like they kind of honed in on a couple of different running plays and just said, hey, this is what we're going to be. These are kind of the way we're going to, I guess, base our running game around. And I think they kind of simplified it on their end, but then they run it out of multiple different looks, multiple different formations. So it looks a little bit different to the opponent, but it's kind of the same base play if you're looking at it from a South Carolina offensive line, tight end, running back, quarterback perspective. So, I think they actually, again, opponent matters. We have to acknowledge that. But I thought they ran the ball pretty effectively the last 2 weeks. And I thought an extension of that was just the blocking on the perimeter. The guys kind of that want to on the edge, your wide receivers, your tight ends out there, both of the last 2 weeks, I believe, have been much more effective in their blocking on the outside. And that, obviously, whether you're talking about a true handoff in the running game or those quick, like just easy throws, you would call them like wide receiver screens or bubble screens, perimeter screens, whatever you want to call them. All those kind of play into the same thing, in my opinion.
So you talked about it earlier, South Carolina beating Charlotte and then beating SC State, two teams that they should beat. And South Carolina kind of starting the season, I think, where a lot of people anticipated they would at 3-2. They're now getting into the meat of their schedule where they're taking on some opponents that could be a little bit more touch and go, a little bit more 50-50 as to who could win these games. One of those being this weekend against Kentucky. I shouldn't even say this weekend, next weekend, because there's 9 days until that game on the road in Lexington, Kentucky against a very talented Wildcat team and a very talented quarterback in Will Levis. What do you think South Carolina needs to work on at practice over these next 9 days to put themselves in the best position against Kentucky, Wes?
Yeah, and here's Kentucky, a thorn in South Carolina's side, as again one of the key swing games this season. And I feel like Kendall, in a lot of ways, will kind of this next stretch of games. This is going to determine how we all kind of talk about. I don't want to say the rest of the season; that might be dramatic, but certainly the next part of the season is probably going to be defined by how South Carolina plays at Kentucky. Kendall, for me, I go back to that South Carolina passing game and continuing to find rhythm. I thought we saw some good things. We really did. Like we saw some good balls from Spencer Rattler. We saw him hit a deep ball to Jalen Brooks. Saw a beautiful kind of a corner route to Jaheim Bell on the sideline. There were some good, efficient things from the offense. We saw a couple of drop passes that led directly to turnovers. You can't have those, obviously, against Kentucky, against these SEC opponents. But I do think we're like seeing the passing game slowly come along. But to me, if you're going to beat Kentucky, the running game is, yeah, I think they're going to be able to run the football this year. It's not going to be to the level they did it against, certainly Charlotte, and not to the level they did against SC State either. So you're going to have to continue to work on the passing game and find that balance. It's all about balance. Can you do a little bit of both, stay on the field, make first downs? And, I think we've seen flashes, but they're going to have to continue to, I guess, chip away and get more efficient at that.
Well, they've got extended time to get ready for that game against Kentucky. So no excuses when it comes to next Saturday night in Lexington as South Carolina faces Kentucky in their week 6 matchup. Wes, thanks so much for coming on here at the last minute, dealing with our technical difficulties on After the Sandstorm yesterday. And thank you so much to everybody for watching. Again, South Carolina defeating South Carolina State 50-10 in their week 5 matchup. They'll be back at Williams-Brice Stadium on October 22nd, facing Texas A&M. We've got all the coverage for you on GamecockCentral.com and on our social media at Gamecock Central. So be sure to check it out and follow us on all of those platforms. Wes, thanks so much. Stay safe out there. Stay safe to everybody watching. He's Wes Mitchell. I'm Kendall Smith. This has been After the Sandstorm, and we will see you next time.